And we're back with another interesting question. Let's find out, what did AI say? At Vicky L 4AI on YouTube. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right into today's question, and I know you're going to love it. We're going to start with Chatgpt, and the question is the belief in white supremacy sustainable? The belief in white supremacy isn't sustainable in any long term sense, socially, scientifically, or morally. Here's why. Number one, scientific unsustainability. Modern genetics has shown there's no biological basis for dividing humanity into superior and inferior races. Humans are 99.9% genetically alike, and the variations that exist don't map neatly onto racial categories. Intelligence, creativity, and resilience are influenced by environment, culture, and opportunity far more than by skin color. Social unsustainability. White supremacy depends on creating rigid hierarchies. History shows such systems always face resistance, whether through civil rights movements, anti-colonial struggles, or grassroots activism. In diverse and interconnected societies, trying to uphold racial superiority generates conflict, division, and instability. Number three, moral and ethical collapse. Systems built on supremacy justify exclusion, violence, and exploitation. Over time, they corrode trust, justice, and the very societies that host them. Over time, they corrode trust, justice, and the very societies that host them. Younger generations are increasingly rejecting supremacist ideas, making it harder to normalize them. Way to go, younger generation. Demographic and global shifts. In many countries, populations are becoming more racially and ethnically diverse. White supremacy struggles to sustain itself when the premise of majority dominance no longer applies. Global interconnection. Through migration, culture, and technology, undermines the idea that one group can isolate itself as inherently superior, although they continue to try. Number five, historical precedent. Every system rooted in racial supremacy, colonialism, apartheid, Jim Crow, has eventually collapsed under pressure, both from internal dissent and external moral, political, and economic forces. In short, this is our summary for ChatGPT. White supremacy can persist for a time through power, propaganda, and violence, but it isn't sustainable. It is fundamentally at odds with science, human rights, and the realities of an interconnected world. You hear that? It is fundamentally at odds with science, human rights, and the realities of an interconnected world. Makes you wonder why our government is trying to disconnect our country from everyone else. Because that disconnect is what white supremacy needs. It needs to be disconnected from the rest of the world in order for it to survive. Okay, let's move right along to Deepseek and see what it had to say. Here's the question again, just in case you forgot. Is the belief in white supremacy sustainable? The belief in white supremacy is fundamentally unsustainable across environmental, social, and economic dimensions. Its core tenets, exploitation, hierarchy, and exclusion, directly contradict principles of ecological balance, equity, and justice required for long-term planetary and social health. Let me repeat that. Its core tenets, exploitation, hierarchy, and exclusion, directly contradict principles of ecological balance, equity, and justice required for long-term planetary and social health. Here's a comprehensive analysis. Number one, environmental unsustainability, ecological destruction. White supremacy's ideology of human dominance over nature, rooted in colonial divine right to subdue the earth, enabled industrialization and resource extraction that caused climate change. This worldview treats nature and marginalized communities as sacrifice zones for profit. I don't even want to get into the climate change thing. We'll save that for another episode. Okay, disproportionate impact. BIPOC, which actually stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. BIPOC communities face 56 to 75% higher exposure to pollution, toxic waste, and climate disasters. For example, Cancer Alley in Louisiana and the Flint water crisis. Despite contributing least to emissions, globally, the global north, majority white nations, is responsible for 92% of excess CO emissions. 92%. While the global south suffers worse climate impacts. Biodiversity loss, conservation efforts rooted in white supremacy, example, violent removal of indigenous people to create pristine national parks, disrupted ecosystems. Indigenous stewardship is proven more effective by biodiversity. Of course, you're going to remove the people who are closest and most knowledgeable of nature from nature. That's just idiotic. Okay, number two, social fragmentation and injustice, health disparities. Environmental racism shortens lives. Black children are 75% more likely to live near hazardous facilities, resulting in higher asthma rates. 13.4% versus 7.3% for white children, and chronic diseases. Exclusionary movements. Mainstream environmentalism remains 75% white-led, excluding frontline communities from decision making. Unbelievable. This undermines effective climate action. Cultural erasure. Indigenous values of sustainability. Example, balance with nature, were appropriated while their voices were silenced. So they tried to steal their knowledge but silence their voices. Examples include land theft for parks, steal their land, and quiet their voices as well. Sound familiar? Geez. Okay, examples include land theft from parks and dismissal of traditional ecological knowledge. Number three, economic instability, racial capitalism. Extraction of labor and resources from BIPOC bodies, that is Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and lands fueled industrialization but concentrated wealth among white elites. For example, redlining. Force Black communities into areas without green infrastructure, creating urban heat islands with temperatures 10 to 15% higher than white neighborhoods. Fossil fuel executives, overwhelmingly white, profit from Arctic oil exploration enabled by melting ice caps. But yet and still, those wealthy 1%ers want to try to blame us for global warming. I don't even want to get into global warming because that's a whole nother episode. But just the logic behind that, it doesn't compute. Okay, where were we? Wealth gaps. Discriminatory policies, for example, denied mortgages, urban renewal, blocked wealth accumulation in BIPOC communities, perpetuating cycles of poverty. Number four, self-defeating logic. A lot of that going on. Climate havoc threatens all. White supremacy assumes environmental harm can be outsourced to disposable communities. This is so true. However, climate change, like wildfires, pandemics, and sea level rise, eventually impacts everyone. Far right co-optation. Modern white supremacists use ecological rhetoric, for example, protecting land for white people, to justify anti-immigrant policies. This distorts genuine sustainability and fuels conflict. Okay, pathways to true sustainability. Dismantling white supremacy is essential for resilience. You heard that? Dismantling white supremacy is essential for resilience. Center justice. Adopt the 17 principles of environmental justice, including reparations. Now we're talking Deepseek. Now we're talking. Everybody else gets reparations. Okay, indigenous sovereignty and inclusive decision making. Amplify marginalized voices, fund BIPOC-led climate initiatives, and integrate indigenous knowledge. Restorative policies. Redirect resources to frontline communities. Example, clean energy jobs and pollution cleanup. Okay, in conclusion, this is Deepseek's conclusion. White supremacy is a pathological system that accelerates ecological collapse, deepens inequality, and undermines collective survival. Its elimination is not just a moral imperative, but a practical necessity for a livable future. Sustainability demands anti-racism, equity, and systemic transformation, replacing extraction with regeneration and hierarchy with justice. I think I should read that again. In conclusion, this is Deepseek's conclusion. White supremacy is a pathological system that accelerates ecological collapse, deepens inequality, and undermines collective survival. Its elimination is not just a moral imperative, but a practical necessity for a livable future. Sustainability demands anti-racism, equity, and systemic transformation, replacing extraction with regeneration and hierarchy with justice. Okay, what does any of this have to do with, or how does any of this affect our daily lives? Well, we're all living in the same world, so we all see how racism is destroying the United States. And it's unfortunate because it's happened again. And the lie of white supremacy is one that is definitely quickly being disbanded under this administration for sure, to not only the United States but to the rest of the world. So that's a good thing. But we have to get ourselves in a position that once it collapses, the ideology, we need to be able to swoop in and do what we need to do to make the United States a better place to live for everyone, not just the elites. Okay, let's go ahead and move to our positive saying for today, which comes from another one of my favorite comedians, Mr. Cat Williams. Very simple statement, but extremely important. I used to think this way, then I got more information, and now I think another way. I think differently. This is called growth. Got to keep growing. Never stop growing. That's all I have for this episode, number 28. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to seeing you with episode 29. Peace.